It's the Makin Moves Podcast, featuring Darren James and Tyler Alexander.
I love these guys.
Because they're funny, they're entertaining.
Talking everything about mindset, money, and motivation.
That's what I'm talking about.
Real facts, real truth, and real estate.
Come on, let's go.
All right, folks, here we are, episode number 4. We on 4, TA?
I think so.
4,
yeah.
Absolutely. We're here with my co-host, Tyler Alexander, and also Mr. Jim Chapman of Local Leaders. Hi, Jim. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on, and thank you for the invite.
Yeah, man. I can't think of anybody else. Thank you for allowing us to use your studio to do this and put all this together. And, man, it's been a whirlwind for what you have accomplished in such a short time. Tell us more about that.
It's really been crazy. Podcasting in general is something that when you kind of hit, it is like you're going off a cliff. You peter, and you try different things, and then when you find that sweet spot, you're off like a bullet. And no different for me. There's no doubt about it. Very blessed with what I do for sure, and get to have talented individuals such as y'all come in my studio and be entertained by your podcast.
Yeah, thank you about that. I appreciate that tremendously, and I know Tyler does as well. But man, tell us how you got started in this. Like it's a journey. You had a previous career in the painting industry for years.
Yes, I was an outside sales reps for a paint coatings manufacturer. Shout out Farrell Calhoun, and beautiful family-owned company that had a 100-year history, and that was my life for 20 plus years. Saw myself doing nothing else. Was very successful. Built a territory that pretty much ran itself. I would do a lot of phone answering and going by job sites and things, but was beyond the point that I was having to hustle up business like I was when I was younger. When you're working with small family-owned companies, the thing that they struggle with the most is letting go of money for advertising. And so us as salespeople, we were their advertising. That's what we pay you for. You go tell everybody about the paint. We don't. That's right. And so I would always look for innovative ways to do that. And I'm gonna shout out Darren real quick, because for many years I would kind of watch what Darren was doing, because he was coming up with some really innovative ideas to promote his brand and himself. And I think you have to promote both. Yeah. And so I learned some things. You might have been the first one to have a vehicle wrap in this area.
I was the first.
And I thought it was genius. Yeah. I'm like, Darren James is a genius. I announced it first, but it was things like that. And I was trying to do that more on the construction side of things and the paint coating side of things. And one of the ideas I came up with was, I'm going to take my cell phone and I'm going to go to a job site and I'm going to film these painters, give them a little promotion, and have them show what I call paint hacks. So how do you touch up a sheetrock wall? What's the proper way to roll a wall? Those kind of things. And I would film it and I would put it on YouTube. And believe it or not, I had a little bit of success doing that. I had an audience that was a steady 12 to 1,500 download audience every time I would do it. And I was getting a lot of comments, and people were appreciating that I was putting that out there. And that was my first kind of venture at podcasting.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So think back, tell me more about your childhood. When you said you were in the sales industry coming up, it was very hard.
Yeah.
Coming up. Tell me more about that. How did that evolve to what it is today?
Well, when I started out in sales, it was just kind of like the onset of technology. So believe it or not, I remember beepers, and when you would have customers actually need to get in touch with you, they would page you, and you would have to go to a Circle K or something and stop and use the phone, and you had to make sure you had a roll of quarters in your car.
You did.
They had
before my time.
a little before your time.
Much.
It was hard to sell that way, but that was the way we did it. And they had phones, but they were suitcases, right? And you had to unzip them, and it was like $1 million a minute to use it. And so very, very few people had those. But that's kind of how I started in that. And because I was working for a company that wasn't a public company, it wasn't as well known, so it was a little bit harder to get the message of what I was selling out. But once I got the message out, I knew the other challenge I'd already hurdled, which was I sold a good product. I never had to sell something that I didn't believe in. And for me, that was a distinct advantage over my competition.
Yeah.
I just felt like our paint was flat out better.
Yeah.
And I believed it.
Yeah, and then you got to believe when you're in sales, you have
Yeah.
to believe in that product, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's like if I ever went into car sales, I'm going to go work at a place and I'm going to drive that automobile that I'm selling. I'm not going to go work at any place and not have that type of automobile because I have to believe in it and I got to use it.
Yes.
And that's the way I've always operated. And everything in my life, I've always operated that way.
Yeah, and Zig Ziglar way back in the day said, "Show me something someone that doesn't believe in the product they're selling, and I'll show you a con artist."
That's right, absolutely.
And a con artist can sell you anything, but someone who's a real salesperson cannot. They can only sell you what they believe in.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So your mindset is a whole lot different than a lot as a business owner. Yeah. Your mindset is absolutely amazing. Were you, whenever you were coming up as a child, did you have a positive mindset? Tell me more about your childhood. I'm interested in that.
Interestingly, with my childhood, it was a little rough growing up. I had a lot of blessings and I had a lot of things that were a little rougher. My mother was a single mother until I was almost 7. Then she married who I knew as my father, who was, I guess technically would be your stepfather, but I didn't view him that way. Right. And very fortunate that me and my sisters, very fortunate that my mom met someone that was willing to take in 3 kids like that. Now, you don't grasp that when you're a kid. You don't grasp that till you're much older, and you're like, wow. That's a big deal. And so I wish I would have appreciated that more growing up. But growing up was a struggle for me. I kind of felt like I got lost in the mix of many kids. And I had a tragic death of one of my siblings in my family that really affected the entire family. And I think specifically my mother. And understandably so, as I got older, I understood that. You lose a child, that's about the biggest nightmare you could ever think of. So struggled with those things. Graduated high school, moved on to college, and I'm very fond of telling people that thank God I met my wife because were it not for my wife, I'm not really sure what would have happened to me. I was living a fast life between the ages of about 18 and 20, and I never did anything like rob banks or anything, but I was drinking a lot. I was going out as much as possible and just doing a lot of things that could have got me in a lot of trouble. And I met a woman that was worth me giving up everything else for. And, we've been married 26 years now. Her family dynamic was different. Yeah. I did not have a family where everybody said, I love you all the time. Yeah. She did.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was so strange. I remember being like, almost like it was weird. I found it strange that they would communicate that because I wasn't raised that way. It wasn't that I wasn't raised around love. You just didn't communicate it like that. And I found myself desiring that more, and I realized how important that was.
So have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages? Have you read that yet?
I have heard of it, but I have not read it.
Amazing book. It will change your world.
Really?
It is a great book. Positive affirmations is one thing that people love. People like physical touch.
Yeah.
Many different ways there. And so it's a great, great book for you and your wife. If you ever have time, sit down and read that book and go through it. It's
definitely check that out.
It'll change your world. It's definitely a great book. You too, Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, definitely look into it for sure.
Great book, great book.
But what you want to go ahead? Yeah. So I know obviously you're into big podcasting now. You have your own podcast, and so that's actually where I first found out about you about a year ago. So I'm big on like crime and like prisons and jails and stuff like that.
Me too.
And so I came across actually on YouTube. It just had popped up on my feed one day, your Bloody Angola podcast, and I started watching it, and I was like instantly hooked because like we go to Angola for like the rodeos all the time. I always want to do the tours, and like in 8th grade, which is so crazy to look back on, like this actually happened. Like our 8th grade field trip, we went to Angola prison. Yeah. For an 8th grade field trip. And like looking back on it.
That's not why you went to Angola prison.
we were visiting. It was just a visitation.
Yeah, you were having visitors.
Right. And so like after that, I like kind of fell in love with like the prison side of it and like learning all that. And so I fell in love with your podcast. So kind of tell maybe a little bit about your podcast, and I know you and Woody, kind of what y'all do on y'all side of it,
Yeah,
it's an awesome podcast.
Thank you very much, and that's a story in and of itself. Woody, I actually met because I had Local Leaders, the podcast where I interview small business owners, and I wanted Woody Overton on my podcast for several reasons. One, I found him intriguing. His story in and of itself is just great. He's unbelievable behind a microphone, but last but not least is he also had a great following. And I was like, wow, all those people are going to see my podcast. And so that marketing side of my brain started kicking in. So I sent him a message. It was like War and Peace, didn't know him, but begged him, pretty much to come on Local Leaders. And he responded back. He said, Jim, you had me at hello. That was all he wrote back. And my text was like a mile long. So he ended up doing that podcast. Local Leaders blew up overnight. And me and Woody just started doing a lot of things together. Woody asked me, did I want to produce Real Life Real Crime? And I said, sure. And now this was a huge podcast and still is. And so, of course, I'd want to do that, but I played it off like, yeah, let me check my schedule, and freaking out in my mind and started doing that. And throughout that journey, we always wanted to do something with each other. And so we said, well, what do we both share a passion for? And there were two things. One was the mafia. We were just both very into just anything to do with the mafia is intriguing.
Running from the mafia.
Running from whatever. And the other thing was the criminal mind as it relates to prisons. And I said, man, we've got, Angola right here. You have a history with it because Woody's mom grew up on the B line. He has uncles that work there, and Woody had worked there at one point. So we started Bloody Angola, and our first episode was entitled The Walls, which is Angola before it was Angola. Actually, Louisiana State Penitentiary, when it started, was in Baton Rouge. And so we started that podcast with The Walls, and it flew. The Walls is still our most downloaded episode. And from there, we just started popping them out, man. And, history is a big thing for us, but especially prison history.
Right. It was fantastic. That was actually the first one I saw when I kind of got hooked was watching The Walls. And
yeah.
It is, it's very, because it's crazy. You don't really, you hear the stories and you hear the shows about Angola, but like I've never had anyone put something out there like that where you break it down and go through everything that really is involved in all that. And for me, like I said, a crime junkie, like that is an awesome podcast. I love it.
Thank you very much.
Definitely anyone out there that haven't watched it, y'all go take a look at it because it's amazing. It really is.
So how do y'all get I'm curious, how do you get the data behind that? Like as far as what goes on?
A lot of research. And I'm the self-professing research guy and Woody will happily say that Jim does the majority of that research. And so what I do is, in a lot of cases, I dig really, really deep into court cases and online stuff to find that research. Thankfully, having, an internet makes researching a lot easier than it used to be. But in a lot of cases, we get people that will message us that have had experiences with certain individuals, and we'll kind of piece those things together. And but research is probably 90% of that podcast. That's where all the time is involved. What we're doing now, the actual podcasting, it's kind of like when you play football. The practice is where you really do everything. The game is the fun part. This is the fun part. The research is fun because I have an interest in it, but it is very time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. Have y'all thought about maybe like someone that gets out of Angola, like putting them on your podcast?
Yeah, and actually, I've had individuals. We actually had an individual on our podcast. He had been in Angola, but that's not where he was housed. It was a different prison in Louisiana, but he worked with a lot of guys that were in Angola. We had a guy on our podcast that is actually probably the most well-known prison figure in the state of Louisiana. He was the first individual released under the Juvenile Clemency Act. They had an act that passed into law where if you were convicted of a crime as a juvenile, you would be, and it was life in prison with no parole, you would be eligible at some point. He is probably the biggest example you'll ever find of someone who made a really bad mistake when he was 15 and high on PCP, and fast forward to he's 40, and he is the real life version of Andy Dufresne. I mean, the real life version. Works for the governor, or the past governor, and does a lot. His name is Andrew, and he does a lot for reintroducing parolees into life after they get released, because the thing is, these guys at some point they're going to get released, most of them, and when they do, you want to have someone there to be able to kind of walk them through things that has been there, and that's what his nonprofit does.
It's
That's awesome.
Military life a little bit. You have somebody showing you, overseeing everything within that deal. You're operating underneath that parameter. They have somebody telling them what to do all the time, when to eat, when to wake up, when to go to sleep, etc. So you really have to have somebody to hold your hand and come back into society.
Yeah, and function and not, recidivism is a real thing, and a lot of these guys recommit because they don't realize the options that are available to them. They feel like, well, now I'm a felon. Now I have to put it on an employment application. I'm a felon. I can't get hired, and the only thing I know how to do is sling dope. Yep. And so they start slinging dope again, and they end up right back in jail. Well, his nonprofit seeks to avoid that. And I think they have an 87% non-recidivism rate or something. It's way high.
That's phenomenal.
It's very good. It's working.
Yeah.
That's like in Shawshank, that's one of my all-time favorite movies.
I love it.
With Andy Dufresne. But in there, Morgan Freeman talks in one of his little things. He was talking when he kept trying to get his appeal process. He was talking. He said, everyone in here gets institutionalized.
Yes.
And so you saw the ones that, I'm drawing a blank on the old man's name that ended up
Brooks.
Yeah, Brooks. Yeah. That's right. So Brooks was in there 40-something years, and the day he was getting released, he didn't want to get released, and so he tried killing somebody in there so he could stay, because he's like, I don't know what to do in the outside world. Because you're so institutionalized in there for so long, you're told what to do, and now you're out. And when he got put in jail, there was nothing. There was no cars. He talks about there was none of that, and so he got released and ended up killing himself once he got out, because he couldn't survive in the world like that. So that's awesome to have an organization that does stuff like that. You say he's really like Andy. Like, was the movie based off him, or you were just saying he's like, okay?
But if he looked exactly like the character, and if he sat and had a conversation with you for 30 minutes and didn't tell you he was ever in prison, jail, anything, got a ticket probably, you would never know.
Wow.
Really?
He is as put together as they get, and squared away, no doubt about it.
That is awesome.
Yep. So how do y'all do y'all's episodes as far as that goes? As far as your next episodes, do y'all plan that in advance?
We try to as much as possible, and I used to be real good at planning out a whole season in advance. Not as good about doing that lately. Believe it or not, what I'll come up with now is me and Woody will kind of brainstorm on like a Thursday, and we'll say, okay, what do we want to talk about next week? And sometimes there's things in the paper that are occurring, like the crime session that just happened with the governor. That was something we talked about because it directly related to Angola and the changes that are going to happen. But if there's nothing major breaking news wise, I have probably 15 different books on Angola, and some of them have stories in there that are many, many short stories in one book. And I'll go through there and I'll just kind of pitch Woody some and say, what do you think about this? In a lot of cases, Woody will have some sort of experience with that we can tie into as well.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
So let me ask you this, Jim, and maybe for everyone out there, this would be great for them to, kind of get some insight on, you had a great job in sales and everything. But kind of like us, in my story with real estate, like I just felt like there was something else out there that I was more passionate about. Yeah. And anytime you take a leap into entrepreneurship and self-employment, it's scary because you're taking a leap into unemployment. I mean, you're unemployed every single day that you clock in. And so for you, kind of, tell them how, I guess if a listener's out there and maybe they're on the brink of jumping into something they think they're passionate about, but they're scared to do it, kind of what's your insight on that? And
well, and I'm glad you asked. And, my situation for me was unique. A lot of times when you hear people and they're starting a business for the first time, they're in one of three situations. Either there's someone that has a spouse that is the primary breadwinner and they're just looking to make a little extra money, Disney money or something like that. And then there's people that maybe they are just ready to jump off a bridge with their current job. They're working for somebody, just don't like it. I couldn't imagine a job like that and living that kind of life, but there's people that do, and they do what they have to do, right? Maybe they got kids and all those sorts of things. In my situation, it was really none of that. I loved what I did. My money situation was right. there was no reason that made sense on paper for me to ever leave. I call it almost a push. The more I would almost try to self-sabotage myself with podcasting, the more success I would find. And I'm like, man, something will not let me get away from this microphone. And just paying attention to things going on around me, signs. I'm a big believer in speaking things into reality. And so for me, it was kind of a different path because I was having success doing what I was doing. That being said, I'll never forget the first day that I made that decision. Me and the wife had the talk. I got her blessing on that. And I had the talk with the owner of Farrell Calhoun, which was the company I worked for, got this building, sat down, took a breath, and it was kind of my first day open. And I remember thinking, if that phone don't ring, I'm going to freak out. Then I went into like a panic in my mind. I'm like, what did I do? Because there was this guy they kind of gave my territory to. So I'm like, even if I go back, I'm not going to have any customers. So I'm freaking out. And it's funny how God took care of me in that time and would give me that nugget I needed to almost everything's going to be okay, but you got to earn it. And so he would give me that one person that would keep me going until another one came. And I was able to put enough of those nuggets together that I just kind of got a ball rolling. And it was a lot of hard work because I had spent 22 years being one person and having to completely reinvent myself. And that was hard because people kept looking at me as the paint guy. And I'm like, I'm not the paint guy. I'm the podcast guy. And no, you're the paint guy. And look, to this day, I get a call at least once a week about paint. And I love it. And I answer it. And please, whoever, keep calling. But one person called me last week and placed an order. And I'm like, I hadn't been in, it's been almost 3 years since I've been in the paint business. But that in a way felt good because it spoke to the impact I had in that industry. Yeah. For sure.
What was the biggest challenge whenever you pivoted from the previous career to now?
I think the reinvention of myself, getting people to understand that that I was a completely different business now, and my skill set was as good as my skill set was on the paint business side of things. It was just with podcasting now. I wanted people to understand this wasn't like a side hustle. That's the hard thing about podcasting. 99.9%, it's just a side hustle. And some people do it. They just want to do it. They love talking to people and learning. But it is viewed as something that you can't make a lot of money doing. Or biggest question I get asked, how do you make money? People can't believe you make money. And I'm like, oh, you can make great money if you're good at it. And but really it's consistency in podcasting is the key.
Absolutely.
That's the key in anything.
It is.
Yeah. Great point, Darren. It really is. Good point.
Yeah. So what, with local leaders, kind of tell, I know Darren got you to tell a story on how you started. So kind of tell, maybe people out there that don't know exactly what it is or what you do with local leaders. What is that? And kind of break that down on what it looks like.
So local leaders, and that's kind of like, of course, now that we're established and I've branched off, I have some other companies, Envision, which is the company y'all are a part of. That's where we do our editing side of things. For some people, we do full production work. Local leaders is like the baby, and I get almost emotional about this because that company really led to things that, man, in my wildest dreams I wouldn't have imagined I would be able to do. And local leaders doesn't make the money those other companies I have make, but I'll never give it up because it's all about small business owners just like me, just like y'all, and getting their name out there and allowing them to compete with multi-billion-dollar companies. And that's hard. And that platform, when I started it, nobody was doing it. It was a platform for someone to be able to sit down for more than a 30-second commercial and not only tell what they did in their company, but why they did it. That's what matters. Yep. People don't buy the product. They buy the person selling the product. Anybody will buy anything once. But in order to get someone to buy from you over and over again, send you referrals, things like that, you've got to sell yourself. Yeah. And that platform enabled people to be able to sell why they do what they do. Getting to the why always leads to the buy.
So what can we do to help grow that end of it? Where are you going now, and where do you want to be in the future? And what can we do as a community to help you get there?
You know, that's where probably I've had my biggest blessings. Is one thing about Livingston Parish community, and I just had Congressman Garrett Graves on local leaders, which if you would have told me that 3 years ago, I said you were crazy. Come on my show and talk about, you know, the things that he's done. But the community is really the most touching part for me, because were it not for all these people, I never would have been able to grow it. I've done everybody from Big Mike to you name it. The people in this community that are staples, right? Yeah. They've been on local leaders, and yes, it helped keep the lights paid and the rent paid and things like that for them to come on. But really, I just love to sit down and hear their story. Everybody's got a story. Every business owner. Darren James has a story that I bet is just unbelievably phenomenal on how he not only got into real estate, but the things that he's seen and done. And he's telling his own story throughout his podcast every week with you. And so local leaders, that's my platform to help other people who don't have a podcast booth get out and just have an hour that's all about them.
Yeah, well, everybody has a story, man. And the hardest part is that, you know, how do you, because I mean, you can change the life of one person just by telling them your story.
You really can.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing. And that's where I'm at in my world right now. You know, one of my biggest fears, Jim, is that I'll leave this world not being able to change the lives of as many people as the man wants me to upstairs.
Amen to that.
I'm so scared to do that because I'm not on a big platform. I mean, I'm well known locally, but I'm not on a big platform like, you know, some of these other people, right? And so I've like this guy, you know, Tyler next door. Next door. Did I say next door?
You did say next door.
It's Tyler besides me. So Tyler, I mean, he came to me with, he knew my daughter and so forth, and his story is absolutely phenomenal, what he's accomplished in just 3, almost 4 years in the business of where he's at right now.
I can only imagine. And a very well-spoken,
unbelievable,
quick on his feet thinking individual.
Unbelievable.
Thank you.
Unbelievable, top notch.
Yeah,
so.
It really is. And that's what, you know, I think as much as me and Darren want to do this podcast, you know, I think I've said it in the past 2 podcasts, you know, if we can just help one person out of this, like, and then we don't get, you know, it's not like we're getting thousands of views on our videos, but that's not what it's about. You know, it's about the one person that maybe wanting to take that leap and do something they really love, or, you know, that one person that may get inspired and maybe have a story that they want to share and something. Yeah, that's what it's all about. You know, we're not in this to make money. We're not in this to do that. It's just, we love talking, as you can tell. We don't script anything. If anyone didn't know that, nothing scripted on this podcast.
It's
Jim
raw,
knows
baby.
It's all raw. We walk in here and press record and it goes.
And that's the best way. You know, Darren, how old are you?
50. I just made 50 in
Just
January.
made 50. I'm 49.
Yep.
So we're pretty much the same age.
Yeah.
And both of us are very similar. And one of the ways that we're very similar is at some point in your life, it becomes about making impact on other people. I cannot tell you how big of a word the word impact is, because the biggest tragedy for me, and I can relate to what you said, is laying there and maybe I know I've got a week to live and I think back on, oh, I've had this success and, oh, we hit number 1 on the Apple, and those are great. But whose life did I change for the better?
That's right.
That's what's going to matter to me. And those seeds start now. And so for you to be concerned about that at a much younger age is impressive. And I wish other young people would And I hope that other young people have that same outlook, or maybe they'll get it from this podcast. It's important to make an impact.
That's the goal, man. You know, making the impact on lives. And, you know, it came before I was in real estate, you know, in physical therapy. And I think that's kind of where I got that, because, you know, working at a clinic for 2 years, you know, I don't know if either one of y'all have went to physical therapy before, but, you know, after surgery, that's the last thing you want to do, you know. And so getting these people that come in there, and I just joke with them and laugh with them, and they don't want to see me, they don't want to be there. And then the next day they're so excited to come. And it's like, I mean, I've had 80-year-old women that come in there after surgeries, and we go, one of them, me and her went and watched Cars 2 when it was in theaters. Like, it was just stuff like that was so awesome. And you go from someone not wanting to be there to they cannot wait to see you every single day. And that's what was so hard for me to get out of that field, because that's what I love so much about it. But real estate is the next closest thing to where I can impact people like that every single day, and even realtors out there, you know. And so that's always been my drive and my focus, you know, with that, because, you know, Darren knows my story. Everyone knows my story. You know, I've never had any money, and, you know, now I make money. So I've seen both worlds of it, and, you know, I can impact lives regardless of what spectrum I'm on. And that's what I love about, you know, my job and what I do. And, you know, y'all are almost the exact same way with everything as well. So
look at the lives that Joe, just thinking about it, you know, back 3 years, look at the lives you've impacted so far. Think about your first sale you made, right?
Yep.
And how you impacted those people's lives. It's amazing. And
it really is.
And you too, Jim. I mean, look at the lives that you made and the lives that you've impacted just in the community here.
Yeah.
Not to mention those lives that you've impacted nationally through the podcast and all your other outreach efforts.
Right. And definitely totally my honor. And I'll even say this, that, you know, you're in a unique position that you have kind of a mentor here that you're very fortunate to have, because that can go both ways. You can have also a mentor that is a bad mentor, that, you know, and I think that's the problem with a lot of young people, is that they're looking up to the wrong people. And but I can't tell you how lucky you are to have that. I had that, a mentor like that around 19 years old. I worked with someone. I worked at a Super Kmart. I was, you know, working through school and just stocking shelves and things like that. And the guy that was my boss there was a military guy, and very, very put together, staunch, don't be late, that kind of thing. And I was never late a day, or never missed a day of work, because I didn't want to let him down. And and that's crazy at that age to really be that concerned about. But I was. He mattered. His opinion of me mattered. And that was, I think, the first time in my life where I really dove into the importance of someone else's opinion of me, that I cared what they thought.
Oh, absolutely.
And it made a big difference.
It's big. Recognition is a huge thing. And, you know, that's something with Darren, you know, when I met him and ended up, you know, getting into the real estate field, you know, we weren't very close at the beginning because we didn't really know each other, you know, but, you know, seeing, and he is my mentor in this business, and in a lot of other, he ordained my wedding. So, you know, it's our relationship goes way beyond.
I mentored your wedding.
He mentored my wedding too. Yeah. My open house is what he called it.
I'm still giving you advice.
That is true. He opened my wedding ceremony with welcome everyone to Tyler and Shelby's open house. That's how he opened it. Awesome. So, you know, he has definitely been my mentor, and, you know, the biggest thing is recognition. And I think that's where a lot of people, you know, these, especially younger people, get under mentors and brokers or even bosses, and, you know, there's no recognition to anyone down there. And that's where you really see the difference in a leader and a boss. And there's a big difference in those two.
Huge.
And there's a big difference. And, you know, I've never in my life, which he's not, but I've never in my life looked at Darren as my boss, and never will, because that's not what he is. You know, he is a leader, and I'm hoping, you know, one day when I get 10, 15, 20 years into the business, that I can be on the platform that he's on, and you know, change the lives that he changes. You know, that's kind of similar to his story, where he says, you know, he hopes the lives he wants to impact, he hopes it's enough by the time, you know, he has to go. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at with, like, I just wish I had a bigger platform to do it now at this age, and I don't. But I understand time, and everyone's got their own timeline to do things, and, you know, hopefully have plenty of time to get there. But that's one thing that, you know, drives me every day as well, is getting to the office and seeing, you know, anybody that I talk to that day could be a life that I change, you know, whether it's real estate or whether it's not. You know, as long as I just, that's been my passion through physical therapy and through real estate. And I think that's where me and him have very similar values on that.
Yeah. You never know who you're going to come across, or who you might impact just at the grocery store or what someone else is going through. You know, people say that a lot. It sounds cliche-ish, but you never know battles other people are facing, and you need to keep that in mind when you cross their path.
Absolutely.
I talked to a lady this morning. I was down in Lafayette, Louisiana this morning, putting a new property on the market over there, and a lady calls me up. She said she wants to buy a home. Been through 4 realtors already. They just gave up on her. She said, I'm pre-approved. She says, I'm having some challenges. I just can't find the right house, et cetera, et cetera. And so we got to talking and ended up praying with her over the phone.
Yeah.
Very spiritual person. And she basically, I learned that she's lost 3 kids in her life.
Wow.
And just everything, the trials and tribulations that she's been through, and to be able to have a different area that she wants to move into to help grow with, her husband and the children that she has left, it's just it's a big impact. And so that conversation this morning impacted my life so much, because I want to do everything. I want to go through a wall for her to help her get there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the main thing, is that how do you help so many people? Everybody has a different story. And how do we let them share that? And how do we help them get to their next point in life? That's what it's about in this world.
It really is.
Everything is in the man's plan upstairs. It's all in his timing. And hope stands for have only positive expectations. You have to share that hope with other people.
Yeah.
And let them know. And a lot of people say, I don't have time. Well, time stands for that is my excuse.
Yeah. And the first person I heard say that was you. And it was, you had put it on your Facebook page a while back, I think. But I thought that was great. And it's true. And if you are looking for an excuse for anything in life, you'll find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no doubt.
You're going to
find it.
You got to be solutions driven, and that's the key. And kind of like what Tyler was talking about a little while ago, I'm not anybody's boss. I'll be their mentor, and I'll work in the trenches with them every single day. But I'm at a point in my world right now where I love to see people succeed, because everybody should have a life that they never thought was possible. And I love
amen to that. And, a lot of times I almost feel, especially with local leaders, I almost feel, I don't want to say not worthy, but a lot of times I'll stop and I'll look around and I'll say, why am I so blessed? Nobody's life is perfect, and we have struggles. And look, I work way too much probably in some people's minds, but the people that I care about, that love me and I love them, they get me and all of that. But the blessings and things that I have had here with all of the companies that I do, I have no idea. I just feel undeserving of it, but I'll take every bit of it.
Absolutely.
I don't question what's maybe ordained, but it's a beautiful thing. And I will sure work my butt off every single day to make sure that I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
Well,
you're doing a great job at it for sure.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate the opportunity to share with with the community.
You.
Appreciate the opportunity to come in here every other week and just share our story with the world and try to change some lives as much as we possibly can. So
I appreciate it too. Y'all are doing absolutely wonderful. I have people who do podcasts that just blow me away from the first one. Y'all are one of those people, and I'm just blessed to work with y'all. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun when y'all come in.
Absolutely, it is. We're blessed to have you, and be able to do this with you and shooting here, and everything. It's an amazing experience. Doing all of it. So we're very thankful of it. So before we go, kind of put people out there. When is the next podcast coming out for you?
Wow. Friday we have a local leaders coming out with Garrett Graves, Congressman Garrett Graves. We have Real Life Real Crime Daily, which drops 4 days a week. So it drops on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And that's all about current crime throughout the country. It's hosted by myself, Woody Overton, and a gentleman by the name of Mike Agavino. And Bloody Angola every Thursday.
Awesome. Where can they find all this at? I'm on YouTube.
Actually, YouTube Bloody Angola is on. The other and Local Leaders is on. Real Life Real Crime Daily only drops on your audio platform. So, but anywhere you get your audio,
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Well, y'all go check it out. And it was another great episode shot. And
absolutely. I love it. Absolutely. Every time I come in here, it's always something good. So, Tyler,
I'm ready to buy 2 houses now. This is weird.
We have that effect.
Y'all done put that spell on me.
That's right.
I want a mansion right now.
Well, how do they reach you, TA? How do they reach you, man?
So you can reach me. My cell, that's the easiest way to get me, is 225-955-0008.
Sing it for us, TA, one time.
Dial 955-0008.
Call Tyler. He'll shoot you straight.
Shoot you straight.
Oh, I like it.
We'll have to play the jingle one day.
Look, these are great.
We'll have to integrate it.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much. You can reach me, Darren, at agent225.com or agent225.com online. We're locally here in Denham Springs. Our office is right across from the high school. And Jim, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it, Jim.
We did too.